Okay, good day everyone. Today we're going to discuss ceilings and the electrical. I know that you're submitting a lot of that stuff today and I have put some content out there, but I think now that you've spent a bit of time trying to put this information together, I have realized a couple of you are still battling with the concepts of understanding how to use a ceiling, especially in Revit. I might jump to an ArchiCAD model in the second part of this video just to help those of you that are busy with ArchiCAD. But in essence, I just want to talk through the fundamentals of how you would approach doing your ceiling layouts and the information sometimes that needs to be shown. Okay, so this is a little tricky to understand in the beginning. So I'm just going to switch to my screen quickly. Okay. So in a nutshell, we've got an office layout. We've gone and put our finishes in. We've added our furniture. Okay, now we're going to focus on the ceiling. But now, in the beginning, when I discussed the furniture layout actually drives a lot of what we're doing currently. Not everything, but it has a large impact on the ceiling layouts, the floor finishes. Okay, I've got a good example that I'd like to show you just after this, where I'll move the information to the right folder and I'll just quickly discuss that example that was illustrated. But I just want to quickly jump into the fundamentals of how ceilings work in Revit. Okay, so in a nutshell, you're all familiar with your levels by now. You've put your furniture layout, you've all had to go to furniture layout. Okay, you've kind of got to lay out finishes together, floor finishes. Now the last stage of this is to create ceiling plans. Now this is quite tricky to understand. You'll see, now these ceiling layouts depend on quite a few things. You'll see on the ground floor plan that all our door openings are showing. A lot of the brickwork will go up to the underside of the slab if you're going to compartmentalize your building for fire. So some walls will need to go up to the underside of the ceiling so you form a fire barrier between compartments in essence. Okay, so if we go to our view range now, you'll see that our standard section, our cut plane is set at 1500. So 1500 is a good standard because sometimes windows are a bit higher or lower than certain objects. You just want to see everything correctly. Okay, so that's just one thing you need to understand. That's going to be different to your ceiling plan. So I'm going to duplicate my ceiling plan. So I'm going to go to view. I'm going to recreate the ceiling plan for this level. So first floor. So I'm just going to close everything else. I'm going to recreate my ceiling plan just so that we can see the standard settings and what we need to adjust to accommodate the desired outcome for your ceiling plans, because there are different ways that we can represent this information. So if I go to floor plans and I go to reflective ceiling plans, I'm going to say I want to duplicate, so just untick this function, then it'll allow us to duplicate. So I just want to enable something else on my desktop. Good. So I want to, first floor plan, I'm just going to recreate that quickly. First floor, good. Now by default, it depends how you'd set up your course view, but just remember, every time that we're going to duplicate a view, you want to change this to course view, from course to fine, because we're going to have a lot of detail. And once again, you can see all the elevation markers are there. So we never really show elevation markers on our ceiling plans either, just section markers maybe, but ceilings no. Okay, so I mean elevations no. So elevation markers, we will switch them off later, when we'll use them later if we're going to do interior layouts, but we'll get to that later on. Okay, so you can see this building already has some ceilings in, and I'll discuss that in a minute. But right out as we create the view, Revit does give us good information to start with. Okay, so this is what we need to understand. So we're always going to look at the level above, and that'll be 0. These will both be 0. You could also change this to be associate first floor. You could also say first floor as well. So you could say first floor, but then you'll need to know the height of the first floor. So maybe 3,500. These both have to be the same. So this is the only difference between, so if I go to show, you'll see that it's trying to, I'll jump into a section now. If I press apply now, okay, wait, associated. Just make sure that they're always referencing the same view. Okay, so now we're going to look up into this. So there might be information missing. Why is the information missing? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly jump through a section. Just have a look through this part of the building. Okay, so we're on first floor. Let's just change this to fine. Okay, so if we measure DI from here to the underside of the ceiling, so that's 4, so there's a lot of space required. So it means that we've got a service zone, so we've got a zone where the services can run, and we're providing quite a lot of height in this ceiling. So the reason why your ceiling plan is not working correctly is just because we're not looking high enough, we're not cutting high enough. So there's 2 ways you can set these up. So if I know this dimension, 4740, so that's quite interesting. So if I go to this view and I go to edit range and I go and change this to that level, so it's 4740. Okay, so if I change this, 4740, and I change this, these are always the same, press apply, we'll start seeing everything again. Okay, so if you click this icon, hide, it reveals how these work. You just have to understand that the ceiling plan is actually looking the total opposite direction. Okay, so if you just look at this diagram, you'll start understanding what the top does, what the cut does. Now you'll notice that my cut level is very high as well. If I change this down to 1500, we will start cutting through the doors again. So we're going to have all the doors again. Ideally, we don't want to show the door openings, because we just want to show how the ceilings interact with these partition walls. So some partition walls will go right through to the underside of the ceiling and remain cut. So let's just go back to our section and see how this works. Here you can see this wall goes up, but this won't always be the case. Sometimes our cut level might have to be above all the openings. So maybe here we might have a situation. So here we need to determine, so I'm going to use a reference plane very quickly, just so that I can move it up and down, just to kind of give us an idea. So I'm going to put a dimension onto this. So I'm going to dimension this reference plane. Okay. With this reference plane, if I change this to 300, all I need to make sure is that this reference plane is above everything. So like the windows, you see that's probably too low. It'll cut through these windows the whole time. So if I move this up, move it up, move it up, move it up. So in theory, my cut plane could just be somewhere over there, because I actually just need to show the relationship of my ceilings, or maybe just below, because sometimes these walls stop. We might have another plan for that. So for now, don't worry about that too much. Just make sure that when you do cut, too high. So let's do that again. So let's call this 3200. Okay, so that's way above, or even that window is still too high. So move this, move this, move this, move this. Maybe just to that point there. So that's for 3620. Okay, so now I've got a level. So I can go back to my view, go back to my view range. Okay, so here we can go and say 3620. Now we should be cutting above all of our doors. Yes, we have a situation here, but that's a feature wall. So those windows or those glass panes will go up. And you'll notice in section, we've put louvers because we're going to vent. We can either extract or we can vent the server zone. Okay. Now typically that is a cold brick, so it's something that you don't typically want to do depending on the climate, but you can reserve those louvered panels for extraction of the air, dirty air from that floor, for example. I'm just hypothetically, that's one option. Or it can just be a blank panel. So from the exterior side of the building, it looks, let me just jump to the exterior side of the building just so we can see that. So from the exterior side of the building, at least you get to see, so this is like a blocking piece for the floor zone and the server zone. Okay, so we'll have the same effect on the other side of the building. Sometimes those are just blank panels. Okay, we used louvered panels for this just so that it did look quite industrial, and you'll see that we used louvered panels for the basement so that we got good airflow in the basement. Okay. Alright, so in a nutshell, you just need to make sure that your view range works for the purpose of your ceiling plan. So this is ideal. This is kind of what we want to see. Okay, I'm going to go to this floor now in 3D, and I'm just going to explain what we're actually seeing currently. So first floor, so in a nutshell, let's just have a look at the zone, just like this. So I'll cut through the floor bit just so we can start seeing what goes on there. So let's just go to the side view. So I just want to get into the ceiling zone itself, the void, ceiling void. So in essence, you'll notice that each rooms, now this is very typical because in bathrooms, you'll see that the ceilings typically are a lot lower than your main spaces within your offices. Okay, so if I just select the ceiling, for example, I can hide this temporarily. So hide element. Okay, so typically some of your ceilings might vary, and sometimes when you have details like where you get a wall here, you might want a bulkhead, for example, or like a control zone, so it controls your ceiling and the boundary wall, just so that if things need to meet, sometimes it's very hard to create this pattern. So I can see one little mistake with the ceiling layout. Sometimes these tiles, if I had a guess of doing this project from start, I'll probably put in a bulkhead I'll put in a flush plastered ceiling along all the windows. Because ideally you don't want to put these grid systems around a complex wall structure like this, because it's too much work that the contractor has to do for the ceiling layout to get it work. They're going to cut all these little tiles. It gets very tricky to do. So we typically use bulkheads around the ceiling, and we try and keep the ceiling system as a grid. Okay. So that's just one thing to understand. Usually in cubicles, so bathroom cubicles, we try and use flush plastered ceiling, especially if we're going to use downlighters. We're going to do extraction from each cubicle, for example. So air extraction from the bathroom itself. Okay, but totally up to you. We would like you to go and explore these different options on how all of this works. Okay. So in a nutshell, we've gone and set up our view range. This is very important to understand. Remember, we could always set a level above, and just make sure that's 0. So all that I've done here, all that I'm doing, all you have to understand about this, press apply. So if you just go back to the section, the floor above, so we are now looking up here to the top of this level, which is perfect, because it just means if there's any penetrations through the slab, so like these cores, for example, we just need to make sure that we identify those. By the way, these shafts, they go right to the top, so we're always going to use some detail line work to highlight that this is an opening. Okay, so that's important to understand. Okay, so these are going to be voids, they're going to go right through, and we're going to have our ceilings. Okay, so with our ceilings, let's just discuss different ways to put our ceilings together. Right, so let's just go back, close, we'll leave the 3D view open as well, so let's just go to first floor layout. I'm going to open first floor layout, and I'm going to quickly tile these views just so we can see this a bit better. So I'm going to let's tile these verticals, so let's close that one. I'm going to put this one. So I'm going to put my office, so my first floor, so with this view active, I'm going to go and activate my first floor, maybe in my section, so first floor. So you'll see it keeps adding a tab here. That's quite cool to know. Alright, so I'm going to keep this small, I'm going to use these two together. Alright, so let's just go to this office. Okay, so we're seeing these floor plans together. Now you would have seen, so maybe these walls haven't gone up through underside, so let's just go and see how that works. And let's go back to my 3D view. Okay, so this is what we were saying. Some walls will go right up to the bottom, some walls will then terminate to the underside. Okay, so some of these walls don't go up. Okay, I'm maybe looking at the wrong floor here. Let me just double check. Ground floor and first, okay. I understand. So let's just go one floor. Okay. So we're just looking at the, so technically, so let me just go to first floor layout here, because we're seeing two different things. That's very fascinating. Let's close that quickly. View range, just going to check the view range again. So, first floor again, 800. It doesn't matter if we're looking past, as long as we're looking past. I just want to double check something. Change this to associate level above. Associate, no, let's change it to first floor, associated level. Copy that, paste that, press apply. Okay, so in theory, let me just open up my, so let's just tab views again. I just want to go to my VG, bring back my levels. Sorry, I just need my levels back so I can see where the levels are. Switch that back on, press apply, press OK. Okay. So we're looking at the wrong floor. So that was second floor. So first floor, I think there was a naming convention on there. So first floor shouldn't be here, should be open plan. Good. So this first floor layout is technically not correct. So I'm going to duplicate this view. So let's look at this first floor. VG, all on, press apply, press OK. Okay, so that was named incorrectly. So this floor, I've got a feeling, was a duplicate that was named incorrectly. So just be careful when using these old projects. So basically, this will be our first floor. I just want to switch off our rooms quickly because they're going to be, they'll distract us from what we're trying to do here. Press apply, press OK. Okay, good. And the furniture VG, I think there's some overrides. Okay, the furniture item shouldn't be that way, so let's just go to furniture for now. Okay, doesn't matter. All right, so now that we're looking at the same floor, First floor, I'm going to move that out the way. So first floor, here's our open plan office. Here's our bathrooms, etc., etc. I'm going to change it to shaded so we can see it a bit better. Okay, so bathrooms, escape stairs, open plan office. Okay, so this is quite typical. Here we'll have a dividing wall. We don't have any dividing walls in this. It's totally open plan. The only dividing walls we have are these walls over here. Okay, so first floor. I'm just going to delete the ceiling. Now, when you're working on your first floors and you start using rooms, so a lot of you have started using rooms by now, you'll notice that rooms will then automatically find a room provided that your walls are room binding, or we've used room separator lines to split up a room. So once you've set up your rooms and you've divided your rooms up, your ceilings, so if you want to create ceiling plans, they use the same room convention. So how you've enclosed your room, your ceiling plans, so if you go to architecture and you go to ceilings, you'll notice in automatic ceiling creation, you'll notice that it'll find these rooms. You'll see it creates a red line around the rooms that it's trying to encircle. So this is a quick way to go and quickly put your ceiling plans together. So if I go to first floor, I'm working the same floor, pick the type of ceiling that you want to use. So we've typically going to use a 600 by 1200 or a 600 by 600 grid or a flush plastered ceiling board. So these are the three types generally that we're going to use. You can use other patterns. Just remember that it's very easy to go and change how these work. For now, I'm just going to use a flush plastered ceiling. And you can see this automatic ceiling system is trying to put ceilings in the right location. I have found, however, that it does a fairly good job, but it does sometimes spill over to rooms because there was no room binding situation over here. So just be careful when using this tool. Typically, I like to use the sketch tool, and I'll try and draw the ceiling that I'm looking for. So I'm just going to show you how I would have gone about putting a ceiling in this space. I'm just going to draw a ceiling as we start. Here, height from floor, so I'm going to leave it like that from first floor. Let's make it a bit low, and let's make this 2,800 just for the workshop, and I'm going to say finish. So in 3D view, so if we go to 3D view now and we go to our first floor, so let's just move this up and look at our ceilings. So this has come down a bit lower. Okay, so now we've put a ceiling very low in this space. Okay, flush plastered ceiling. So if we go to first floor, now typically these ceilings you want to add a pattern to them so they're easy to read. Okay, now I do have a problem that my view range is too low now, so you've got to keep adjusting your view range so that you can see the ceiling above. Please go and add materials to your ceilings as well. It's very easy to do. So if you see the finished material, gypsum, plaster, so whatever layer that is the final layer that you see, just make sure that you give it the appropriate materials, because remember you'll need to create a material schedule on how this works. So I'm just going to show this as a dense sand. So dense sand is right at the bottom. Where's the dense sand? Here it is. Sand dense. Press OK, press OK, and I'm going to make this a very light grey. Good, press apply, press OK. I'm just doing this so I can read the ceiling. So maybe this is the first place I need to start. Edit boundary, and I'm also going to go and add some information to the sides here. Trim, because there was a nook that we had probably missed. We've got to split this line up, so split the line. Trim. So I keep selecting the wrong lines here. Trim that as well. Now typically when we put ceilings in, there's always a shadow line that we need to accommodate. So I'm going to use my offset tool. I'm going to offset this by 25. Once you've entered the command, this is just a weird thing about Revit. You can click the offset button again and press tab once or twice to select all the line work, all the connected line work, and I'm going to offset this line work by. I'm not going to worry about the detail for now. Once again, I can cut holes in here, so I'm going to say, I'm going to cut a big, I won't cut a hole in the middle. Actually, let's just do it for now. So I'm going to cut a big hole in the middle and finish. Okay, so this is what I mean by control zone. So if we go to 3D view, you'll see now that I've created a ceiling that's slightly lower. Yes, you can go and add the detail around the perimeter. That's something that we can do, because maybe, all right, but for now I just want to highlight what I'm busy doing here and show you how all of this works together. So if we go back to our ceiling plan again, I'm going to put a new grid system that will sit within this grid system. So a flush plastered ceiling is very easy to use against these facades that have a lot of detail. But your grid system you want to try and keep in a grid. Okay, typically. You can make the grid system work around a complex, it's just a lot more work, and it's not the preferred method. So if I go to ceilings again, I'm going to pick a 600 by 600 grid ceiling or a 1200 by 1200 grid, it doesn't matter. By sketch, I'm going to use a pick line tool and press tab once or twice, because I had a ceiling in there already. This ceiling I'm going to make slightly higher. And I'm going to say finish. So now we can have two ceilings. By the way, while we're working on our ceilings, if I just press tab once or twice, tab, tab. So if we go and edit our boundaries, your ceilings can have a slope in a direction, so you can make them fall in a direction. But that will only be if you're going to put a ceiling against a roof pitch, for example. So there are ways to slope ceilings as well. So just bear that in mind. Say finish. So now if we go back to our section, you'll need to keep working with your section and your ceiling plans together so you can start seeing where things are located. So here we've got a grid system above and we've got a bulkhead over here. So let me fine tune this a bit. I would assume that this flush plastered ceiling will be to the window heights going around the building. And you see that the window heights in the back, they all conform to that standard. What I might want to do with this office ceiling for the light, I might want to create some like a ring of light, and I might want to move this up a fraction just so I've got enough play above this ceiling. Okay, so let's make that 400. So there's a nice little upstand here. Then we've got our ceiling grid. So if we go back to our ceiling grid, for example, so from this plan it doesn't look like much has changed, but we've got a ceiling grid system that will start working with this system over here. Now typically these finishes that we use for our ceilings, so let me just pull this down a bit. If we go to edit type, ceilings, this material that we assign to the ceiling are typically model and not drafting. Model meaning that it allows us to go and manipulate the pattern of, and this is, we did exactly the same thing with our floor finishes. So it means that this grid system, we can rotate. We can rotate the grid system. So we can rotate the grid system of our ceiling to work in a different orientation. Ideally, you're trying to make this work with the flush plastered ceiling around, because we're trying to avoid cutting too many of these ceiling tiles or having odd shaped tiles. So typically what we do is we try and find, so how I would do this is I'll find the center of the room. Remember, don't dimension finishes, we only dimension to a core. So maybe this is our core over here. So one of these, we got a lot of detail in this wall, so it is hard to find. So I'm going to typically go and say, let's just pick any point over here. I'm just going to use a dimension to do this. If I use the equal command, you'll notice it hasn't changed anything. It's just moved the pattern to the center of the room. Likewise, I can do it in this direction, because I just want my pattern of my ceiling to work with the room. So I'm going to go to this wall, to that wall there, and maybe to this anywhere, because I'm going to use the center command again. And these are just working dimensions. We can delete them when we're done. All I need to do now is adjust my ceiling to work with the grid. So I'm going to go edit boundary. Okay, so we need to work out where that's going to happen. So I'm going to grab this ceiling first and edit boundary. So I'm going to do it in the opposite direction, because I'm going to use the align command. Align command. So I'm going to align this ceiling to this line over here. So I want to align, so align that, align that. So here we are fine tuning, so align again. So I'm using the ceiling grid to help me align how the ceiling is going to work. So the flush plastered and the good. So now that I've established that, I can end the command. I'm going to go and edit this system again. So tab, I'm going to edit that boundary. All I need to do now is delete the outlines, pick line, and then press tab once, twice, and readjust the extents. We've got one more edit to do. We need to work around the columns. Now, if you are going to work around the columns, this is always going to be offset by 25, because there's a control strip around the column. So I'm just going to remove that information so it represents correctly and say finish. Okay. Typically there's that 25 mil around your ceiling as well, and it'll go around all the detail. So just take a bit of time and get this to work. Now you can see with our ceiling pattern, we are going to have a bit of an issue with one tile over here. So we might have to make a plan. So we either move the pattern to be in the center here, but for now, just understand that this does happen. Okay. So you just need to pick the best of both worlds. If I go back to section again, so we've got our flush plastered ceiling and bulkhead or control zone on this side, and then we've got our ceiling grid system. Now we do have a slight situation that we need to produce some detail on how this is going to finish here. So we've got a bit of a void here. So if we go to 3D view, you'll notice now, so let's just pull this information up a fraction, and I might just cut through the building a fraction in this direction, just so we can start seeing how it's going to work. Okay, so here we've got our ceiling grid system. Okay, you can see the detail shows in 3D. So here again, so here we're controlling, there's a control zone, and then we've got our ceiling grid. So while we're starting to progress this, we can start adding in some electrical information. So I'm just going to open up Teams quickly. I'm going to show you where you can go and get these electrical symbols. Okay, ideally you want to use 2D symbols for this. So this is a quick combination of 2D and 3D again. Please don't waste your time trying to model all the electrical symbols or using 3D electrical lights, because they work, a lot of them need to be hosted in ceilings, and they are complicated to work with. Okay, but that's fine. I'll explain how we use the 2D symbols. So go to BIM library, you'll need to go to library, and you'll need to go and open up the Revit folder. Okay, so in Revit families, you're going to go to electrical, so light fittings, so not that one, it should be electrical. I must actually remove that information, it's in the wrong place. Electrical symbols, and we go to detail items. All you need to do is download all this information and load it into your project. I already have that in my project, or I've already mapped that drive, so I can quickly access that. Revit families, so I can quickly go and drop this information into my project. So find electrical and detail items, and I'm going to select all of this information. Okay, now what's interesting about these objects, so minimize that, I can close that for the time being. So I'm going to grab all this information and drag and drop into my project. Okay. Please notice how they prefaced with the ELE. Okay, it will ask you to upload these as well and update them as well, so just do that very quickly. I won't spend much more time now, I just want to quickly run through this as quick as I can. Okay, now that I've got all of these annotation symbols in, detail items, so here you can see straight out that was lucky, it found the electrical 600 by 600 light fitting for me. So what's great about these can start working with our system. So this is how we're going to go and lay out our lighting. So that's our light fitting. That was quite good how that just worked out. But if you're going to use these detail items, remember it's an annotate detail items families. If you go and start typing in the search icon for ELE, it will bring up all the light fittings or electrical fittings that we need. Okay, and you can see they come in quite nicely. Now, with this grid system, these light fittings will work within a certain grid system because these fittings, I'm just going to copy it again, they get spaced at a certain spacing to achieve the required lux levels for a room. So we might copy these, and I'll explain this again. So let's copy these in this direction. So typically what they'll try and do is they're going to try and space these fittings. So they'll put 3 tiles between each fitting, which should give you the required lux levels. Okay, so that's very important to understand. So what's nice is if I move this now, so doing these ceiling layouts is it takes a bit of work. So if I did this light spacing just like this, I should be comfortable that I'll achieve the required lux level. So I'm just going to grab these again, right click, select all instances and view. I'm going to move them very quickly, so move them back 1. So maybe this is where the pattern has to start. And these work in patterns. Once I've established the light pattern, I can then use the array command, and now I'm going to array them to the second light fitting, 2 seconds. I'm going to go from there, because we need to maintain the spacing, and I'm going to hit 5 for now. So I need 6 maybe, and maybe 7. Okay, so we do have a slight issue with this pattern in the sense that in this direction it doesn't quite work out with our, I can leave it like that and just adjust the bulkhead, but what I am trying to get across is that the spacing is very important to achieve a lux level in an open plan office. So if you're ever in office again, just look up and see how these things are spaced. Okay, there is a requirement for how many of these bays, depending on the lumens for each light fitting, on how the spacing will work. So just, if you are going to find information with regards to lights, go and make sure that the lux levels and the spacing requirements for that light fitting is achieved. Osram's website is pretty good at showing this, but I'm going to leave it here, just like this. Now the one last little thing, if you are using a ceiling grid system, you typically need to illustrate, so I'm just going to use a filled region for this. I'm going to call it, hopefully there's a red one in this project. There usually is solid red. So filled region, solid red. We just need to determine and pick a tile that's going to be our setting out point for our tiling pattern. The outline doesn't really matter, it can be invisible lines, as long as we've detailed a starting point for our, okay. So this red icon becomes my setting out point, so the tiles will be set out, and then we'll use a dimension from the walls to this level, to this point, and from this wall maybe to this point, because this sets out our pattern. This tile sets out our pattern. Ideally I could have moved it to the corner, so just move this detail item. So just be strategic when you are using setting out points or setting out tiles. Okay, so that will be my setting out point for this tiling pattern. So that will determine how the contractor will go and set out the ceiling tiles. Okay, so you can see very quickly I've been able to go and add some electrical equipment that works with the ceiling grid. Just remember, you need to go and add a bit more information with regards to electrical. You did this in second year to a point, but we're just going to expand on that. Here you got all your light switches, so if you just keep going down to electrical, so you can just say switch. So we're looking for a light switch. We're going to put this at the door. Now this is where putting electrical symbols is quite important. You need to understand. You need to put these switches where you're coming into a space. So this might be a double because I know that there's an escape stair there. So this might actually be a two-way switch for these types of lights. And let's just explore that. Detail items. So electrical switch, I want this to be a two-way switch. So just go again. Use the search function at the top, two-way switch. So this will be a two-way switch. So as you come into this space, it'll allow you to switch on the light there. And as you're leaving the space, you can then turn the lights off again. Now detail line work. I'll just do this quickly. For your light fittings, you need detail line work, so you need to make sure that you have the correct light fittings. So this might be, here we go, light fittings, good, electrical light fittings. And with our light fittings diagrams, we only use arcs. Okay, so I just need to fix that electrical fitting. So VG, manage, additional settings, line styles, electrical fittings. It should have been a red line. Electrical wiring. I've used the wrong line. It should be wiring. It's a dash light and it's always at an arc. So it's very easy to go and add these in. So right click, create similar. Right click, create similar. And we always use arcs. Okay, so now we go from light fitting to light fitting. Okay, typically, so watch, I'll do this one as well. These you can array. All I want you to understand is when you're creating a circuit, think of creating an electrical circuit, how they connect. So we only use arcs in this instance because then it doesn't conflict with any other line work in your drawing, and we know that this is a light fitting. Then we're going to go detail line again. So here you just need to connect these in a circuit. So you might go back and then back here again, back, back, back. All that you have to understand is to complete the circuit, this will need to go back to this light fitting. Okay, snap to the center. So SC, snap center, and remember that will need to be an arc again. Okay, I'm just using straight line work, but in essence, you're using arcs the whole time. So create a circuit, put in your symbols. Okay, now I've deliberately left out this detail for now, but if you want to, you can go and model all this information in, and that's quite quick to show the bulkhead and show how this closes, because currently in 3D view, we have a bit of a void between those. You can do this in 3D view, totally up to you. If you go to architecture and we go to walls, we just need to find the appropriate wall. So we need to find flush plaster. So here we go, plasterboard. Okay, there was a video that I linked in underneath this, which is a bit more detailed, but I'm just going to show you very quickly. So 25 thick plasterboard. And with this wall, you can also specify its function, and I'll get to that in a second. So I'm going to say first floor, that's fine. Location, its height, we'll leave it as is. I'm going to leave it, okay. So base offset, so we just need to make it 2300 for now. And I'm going to quickly use the pick line tool. So I'm creating a wall along this edge. If I press tab a couple times, it'll find all of them. So if you just give it a couple seconds, we might have to use the ceiling view to do this. So ceiling view, so if I press tab a couple times, can we just say wall again? I'm going to say I want face finish exterior. I'm going to press tab. So on this line here, if I press tab a couple times, you'll see it'll try and create a chain of lines. If I end the command now and I go to my section, you would have noticed it created a wall. So here's this wall that I've just created. But ideally, we want this wall to start, so DI, so this wall must start from there to there. So that must be 3335. So press all of that. Here we're going to say base offset 3335. We can fine tune if there needs to be any fine tuning. Now this will stop DI, it will stop off that level over there. But in essence, I know that that must maybe finish 3845. So tab again, select all the connected walls. So this will come from ground floor or first floor level, and then this will go up to 3845. You can use the line tool. So with these walls, you can use the line tool to tell it to finish you're going to get the same kind of setting, but if we go back to 3D view, you will notice now that we've created a bulkhead. So we've finished the detail. And what is quite neat, at any point, if I press tab, tab, and I select all the connected walls, you can now join these walls to this information. So I can go and say join, if you want to need join, so I can join that and that, and you'll see that it creates a nice join in your material. You might have to do the same this side. Just don't waste your time doing it everywhere, because you just want your sections to read correctly. So if I just go into section now and I say join, okay, there will be a bit of stud work here, so you can change the wall type, but at least I've drawn a bulkhead in this floor. Let me just show you what it'll look like if I just remove some of the information. Okay, so this was just a quick how-to guide using this example I've given you. I'm just going to take this away. Let's use this in that direction, and I'm just going to remove the top floor as well. Just get into the floor zone, just beneath the floor, just like that. Good. So here I've created my little flush plastered bulkhead, and you can see when we do join it, it joins quite seamlessly. Okay, that hasn't been joined, so that's why you're getting that weird detail, but you can go and join these to make it. Okay, so if you have time, you can go and make and join these things properly, but if you don't worry about it too much. Here I've provided my buffer around. Okay, so that's quite neat. Don't waste your time trying to use 3D light fittings for this exercise. That's something that if you're going to spend a lot more time detailing it 100%, you can go to town. Okay, so that's just a great little workflow on how to go and set up your ceilings and how your lighting will work with this and your floor finishes. So what you can also do very quickly, you can go and select all instances in view. You can also select all this information as well. Remember, these are detail items. You can put them in one group. It doesn't matter for now. You can put them in another group if you want to control them, have more control. But in essence, if I go copy and I go to my first floor plan, I can simply paste my electrical plan over this as well, align to current view. So here I've got my electrical plan with my office layout as well. So this is good to know. Okay, you're going to have to explore this in two. You have to keep jumping back and forth. And what's nice about these group settings, if I go and say edit group, if I change the spacing, so if I just change the pattern maybe, let's just check how this will work. So bring this back to there. So maybe we need to add one more component to this. So maybe we're changing the spacing between these are two. I just want to explain how this works, because I think a lot of you are not sure how this works yet. And if I move all of this one pattern back in that direction, so this might give us a better pattern to work with, and say finish, you'll notice they all update accordingly. So that's very important to understand. Okay, now all we need to do is move this pattern back one more. So if I move this back, you'll see it readjust all the other pattern. Okay, so this is the power of working with Revit and understanding how to use this workflow correctly. Add this 8, and this maybe make it 9. See if that will work with the pattern. So we're always ending up with an odd pattern. So we might do some adjustment. But what's interesting, in our first floor, you would have noticed that all the patterns have changed as well. So everything we did in this group would have happened here as well. Okay, so that's very handy to know how that works. All right. Okay, so that's that in a nutshell for your ceilings. I know that a lot of you might have different workflows, but if you are getting stuck, please come and see me, and I'll try and make a separate video to assist those of you that have very unique types of ceilings, etc., etc. Okay, all right. So for the ArchiCAD users, I'm just gonna not save that for now. I'll leave it in because I'll keep adding information to this model. Okay, for the ArchiCAD users, I just want to open up an example model quickly and show you how to use this example. So if we go to Teams for the ArchiCAD users, I will separate the section later on in a separate video and give it to them separately, but I'll just want to show you guys where you can get more example buildings to work on as well and see how they put together. So BIM library, so for Revit, just remember examples. There's a whole bunch of buildings in here that you can go and access. for those of you using ArchiCAD, I've done the same thing. There's some examples, and the one that I want you to all use will be this office, and it'll be the PLA, the plan version, please. Okay, so please use that. I'm just going to open that office here quickly and show you what that looks like inside, and just quickly run through how their seating plans put together. Okay, so I'm still learning ArchiCAD, so it's taking me a bit of time to, but I just want to show you how they've done these ceilings and what information you can get from this model if you just spend a bit of time exploring the model. Okay, so I can minimize that for now. It's going to close that. Okay, so just let this load. Okay, this is a very extensive model. It's got everything in it that I think all of you as third year should actually go and look at. I'm going to try and export this to Revit as an IFC file because I think the information in the model is quite rich and how they've done it. So I just wanted to show this to you, so at least you've got an example of an office building that you can all explore and walk through. I'll give it to you as Revit as well, so you can all look at it and walk through it. And I'll provide an online link where you can all jump into a room and just walk through this model as well. Okay, so I'm just going to walk through this model very quickly. Just waiting for the command to load, Explore 3D. Okay, so let me just get up to the first floor. So this is a good example. Okay, so we've got some suspended light fittings. Okay, I'm just going to remember what up and down is. I always forget what up and down is. We've got suspended light fittings, we've got air handling units, so we've got some mechanical extraction. So let me just go on the roof quickly. So on the roof we've got a whole bunch of mechanical information. So that's handy to know. So we have mechanical, we've got furniture. So this, as I said, this is a very rich model. We've got some seating information. If I go into the roof, you'll see that all the extraction and mechanical information is here, the water, you name it. They've spent time and they've modeled this. I'm in the bathroom at the moment, so let's just get out the bathroom. Okay, so we've got a model, we've got extraction, we've got a bulkhead, so we've got that control zone around the edge of the building, so that's very typical, and we've got a flush plastered ceiling. Now, I just want to go to the floor plans and just kind of explain what's going on here as well. So if we go to our floor plans, so just go to third floor. When you open up the third floor level here, you're going to see all the services in one go. And this is what I do like about this model that they've created for ArchiCAD. Okay, ArchiCAD does work a bit different in the sense that if you're looking at a floor plan, you're actually looking, it's all the plans combined. You use layer combinations to show. But what is nice about this model, I'm just going to change this to, all visible for now, because I want to show you everything. So we've got ceilings, we've got furniture, we've got electrical stuff above, we've got, so here's all the cable trays for the electrical information, we've got light fittings, we've got extraction on the sides, we've got furniture. So this is a good model to go and explore how this works. I'm going to go to all layers, control all, I'm going to switch all of them on, off. So I'm going to switch everything on for now. And I'm going to find everything with MEP, and I'm going to switch all of them. Now I'm going to switch everything else off. So those, let me just go back. So we just get rid of the search icon at the top. So let me just go to layers again. So in layers, everything's, I'm going to select everything, Control A, and I can switch everything off. Then I'm going to go back here, I'm going to go to MEP. And I'm going to switch just all the MEP back on because I just want to show you the services information. Okay, so here's all the mechanical services that will be in a typical office building. So here we've got your ducts. Okay, so this is how the airflow comes in and out. So we've got extraction, we've got airflow. So we've got air coming in, we've got air coming out. So you can see this duct here, this is extraction. Okay, so we've got different units and they do different things on the roof. Okay, so here we've got air coming in, coming out. We've got all the electrical, plumbing. Okay, so this is quite a rich model on how this is actually, how it works. I just want to show, so I'm going to switch this off. I'm just going to show this as MEP, 3D model, press OK. So I'm just changing the way the information reads as well. So you use overrides. That's the only thing I'm also getting used to. Okay, but you can see there's some good information here. A lot of information to work with. Okay, so this is a good model. Okay, so I just wanted to show you this model as well because I want to give it to you so you all understand. So I'll go back to 3D view, 3D model. I just want to show you the mechanical stuff. So this is a very good model to explore. I'm going to go to layers. I hope there's just an MEP one here. Let's just see, maybe it'll save me a bit of time. And layer combinations, yeah, here we go. So I'm just going to use that layer combination. So layer combination, so I'm going to change this to MEP. Sorry, it's just going to take a bit of time. Yeah. So this is a typical mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So MEP, this is a typical model of what these look like. Okay, so this is a great little building to understand how the cat ladders work, the electrical ladders, so it's called cable trailing, how they work. But to build this model takes a lot of time. So to put all this information together, this is a lot of work. Okay, so this is not just click, click, click and it's done. This is a lot of work. Okay, so this is a typical MEP for a typical office building. This is how it works. Okay, here your heat pumps in the roof, different types of heat pumps, and you can see all the water goes into them. Okay, here's your, so this will be your HVAC system. You might find here's your chiller because they've got the pipes going in, so here are your chillers. Okay, heating and cooling, you've got extraction. Okay, so this is exactly how MEP looks and works in a 3D model. I want to give this to you and show you guys how this all works. Okay, but I think that's it for a nutshell. This is the end of the lecture. I just wanted to show this information to you. For the rest of the class, I'm going to be around for support, and I'll also be on the Teams meeting if you have any additional information.